Hi there, my name's Vince from mrtelephone.co.uk, and in this video today I'm going to show you how to wire up the new NTE5C master socket. Now if you want to know the difference between this one and the old NTE5A, then watch my previous video where I've gone into more detail about the differences. Now in this video I'm purely going to show you how to wire up the main line into this master socket, and then I will do future videos on how to do extensions, how to do VDSL extensions, fit the VDSL faceplate, etc, etc. Now on this one, the main line comes in from outside and it needs to terminate onto this one here. Now different cables have been used throughout the years. I'm going to be wiring this video up using drop wire cable because this is the hardest cable to work with. So if you can do it on this one, or if you can see how hard this one is, then all the other cables will be easy. As I'm doing it, I will show you the other cables that you may have as well and show you what colour codes to use. So your cable might be the blue-orange and the green-brown, or it might be fed from, especially if your master socket is on an internal wall somewhere, you might find that it's fed from CW1308, which is the blue pair and the orange pair, and you can see that there's bi-colours on that, so it's like white with orange bits and then orange with little white bits. Or it might be fed from, especially if you're in a new build, it might be fed from Cat5e cable, in which case then you will have 4 pairs. Again, it's only going to be running down the first pair, which is the blue, but the colour codes here are the same as the CW1308, the white cable. So yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the drop wire cable, and then if you understand that, I'll just quickly show you what colours to use on the older cables. So first things we're going to have to do is we're going to have to strip back the drop wire. Now drop wire is really hard to work with, the other cables are much easier. So for example on this cable here, this one's lovely and easy to work with because all you've got to do is you can just cut it really roughly, and it doesn't matter if you damage the inside wires because it's got a nice drawstring in and everything's really soft. So all you've got to do is get a screwdriver, wrap it round the drawstring and then just pull it down the wire, and by using the drawstring you know now that that wire is not damaged at all. So you can just cut off the outer sheath and the drawstring and then cut away the bit of cable that you damaged to begin with. So here I can see that's the damaged bit from where I just roughly cut the cable. So if I cut it here below the damaged bit, I know now that those wires are all good to use with no damage on them. So that's really easy cable to work with, but fortunately drop wire is actually quite hard to work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to strip it back using one of these. You can get these for a few pounds, they're not expensive. Now give yourself a lot of wire to work with. You don't want to just you don't want just an inch or a few centimetres at the end. Give yourself a nice bit of wire to work with. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wrap this round here. Now with this you can adjust the cut on it, so the more you screw it down, the further into it these little blades will cut. So at the moment I don't know how much to do it, so what I want to do is I just want to do it a small bit at the moment, just so it starts to cut, and then I can always turn the blade a little bit just to allow it to cut a little bit more. I don't want to actually cut the wires on the inside. And now if I go to do this, I can see that I haven't actually gone to the inside of the wires. I've just done a deep score on it. I don't know if the camera can pick that up in there. So now when I bring it down it should like snap. There you go, snap. So I know now I haven't damaged any of those wires inside, so I don't have to worry about a drawstring. Although drop wire cable does have a drawstring, it's really hard to use. And again, if I go that side, you see that is snapped. So I know now that I haven't damaged those wires whatsoever. And as you can see, it really grips onto the wires very tightly. But what you can do is, if you get one of the steel tension wires, because drop wire cable has 4 copper wires in it and it's got 3 tension wires in it, and the tension wires are not actually used, they just give it strength when it goes over the where it goes over the road to stop it from sagging. So if you can release one of those tension wires, it will make the sheath easier to pull off. So I've got rid of one of the tension wires now, and now if you can have a look at the sheath, it's still not easy, but it will come off a lot easier. Yeah? Now if you want the proper tool for it, it's called a drop wire stripper, and basically it clamps over it, it's got two little cuts in, and then you just yank it off and it splits the cable, and then you can use a drawstring. So as I say, sometimes you can be lucky with the drawstring. So if I get the drawstring here, sometimes it does pull down the cable nicely, then other times it doesn't want to go at all. Yeah? If you do want to use the drawstring, so if you're using like a Stanley knife to cut into the cable, you can always give it a little helping hand there by just snipping where the drawstring wants to go down, and then it should go down easy. Do you see there? And then you can use the drawstring. But if you've got one of these, if you use my technique there, then you can see that I haven't actually damaged, once I take the sheath off, I haven't damaged any of those wires there. So although it looks a bit brutal when you're taking the tension wire out, it doesn't actually cause any damage to the wires. Also, you'll know which one of the tension wires because the 4 copper wires are wrapped in this little bit of polythene type thing here, so they're wrapped in that. So when you see the wires exposed on their own, you know they're tension wires, and these 3 tension wires are only used, as I said before, just to give it support to stop it from sagging when it's going across the road. But now that I've started to use the drawstring, we might as well use the drawstring bit. So I'm going to pull the cables down there, and let's get rid of the sheath. Let's get rid of the polythene and the drawstring. Okay, now we're left with our 4 copper wires and this mess of tension wires as well. Now, with the tension wires, the way the proper engineers do it is they cut it about roughly around that much there. And then what they do is they fold it down and they get one of these little protective covers, and the idea of this is you feed the wires through it, and then when you put it down there it protects your fingers, because these little tension wires are so sharp, they're like little needles, especially when you start moving the cable around. Often those little the steel tension bits can pull out, just push out ever so slightly, and they stab your fingers, and they are like little needles. So that's one way of doing it. If you do have these little protectors, just put it on there like so, and now that's a nice safe cable to work with. If you don't have them, then you're going to have to cut them completely flush with the cable, like so. Yeah, you can always wrap a bit of insulation tape around it if you're worried about prodding your fingers. But if you have one of them, use them. Right, okay, so that's our cable there. Now, we have to find an entry hole, so it depends where you're coming in from. If, for example, you're coming straight in through an outside wall, then you don't want to be putting it through one of the side holes. You're going to want to knock it through one of these, that hole or that hole there, because then you can just come straight through the wall and there'll be no cable seen at all, because the front plate will hide all the cabling. But in this video here, I'm going to bring it in. I'm going to bring it in the side one here, because it just depends. You might be coming in from an outside wall, but then the customer might just want it ever so slightly somewhere. You know, if it's, for example, a terraced house, you might come in from the outside wall, but the customer might want it just 1 foot along the wall on the side wall, in which case then you can't put this on the outside wall. But it's not worth changing the black cable to white cable for such a short amount. Like a foot of cable, it's probably neater just to have the black cable on a white skirting board, because you can always put a bit of paint on it. So I'm going to knock out, for example, that hole there. We need to bring the cable through. Okay, now the problem with these new master sockets is there is no place to put a cable tie. So on the old master sockets you would normally put your cable tie on here, and then you would cable tie your cable to here to make it nice and secure. But on these new ones there is no place for a cable tie. So what you're going to have to do is, if you were to allow yourself a nice bit of slack, because then you've got a nice bit of slack for the future. So I'm going to bring the cable up round here and bend it round there. So I've got a nice bit of slack to work in the future. I'm going to put a cable tie on the actual cable sheath itself, and although it's not perfect, it will help a little bit. If the cable was to get a yank, hopefully it would just make it a little bit harder to pull straight out and then pull out of the terminals up there. But as I say, it's not ideal. It would be best if there was an actual place to put the cable tie, but on these ones they haven't put one. So I'll put the cable tie there, and as you can see, it gives a little bit. Obviously, if you pull that hard, it is still going to come. It's still going to come out, but it gives a little bit of helps a little bit. Right, cut the tail of the cable tie away, and basically now we have our socket like so. We now need to terminate these wires onto this faceplate here. Now we're not going to need all this wire, but still leave some slack, because then if you ever wanted a second line in the future, if you were to cut this green and black wire right back, then the engineer is going to have to strip the cable back, and it's just creating more work. So if you just leave a nice little bit of slack, like so, and then I'm going to cut the wires here, because that will be enough. Now on drop wire cable, we're going to be using the white and the orange pair, because that's the first pair on this cable. So in these cables, the wires are twisted round each other. So it might not look, they might all look like separate wires, but they have got gentle twist in them going right the way through the cable. So, and the idea of that is to stop overhearing and stuff from other lines. So if on this drop wire cable, the orange and the white are a pair of wires, so the wires are twisted round each other, and the green and the black are a pair of wires. This is the first pair, this is the second pair. So we're going to be using the first pair. Now, on Cat5e cable, if your house was fed with Cat5e cable, you would be putting it on the white and blue. So it will work either way round. It doesn't matter what colour you put to A and what colour you put to B. It doesn't actually make a difference. But engineers normally keep it straight. So we would normally put the white wire to A and the orange wire to B. If you're using drop wire cable, you're going to be using, again, if it's the first pair, you're going to be using the blue wires. So the blue wires are the first pair, orange wires are the second pair for the second line, green wires are the third pair if you had a third line, and brown wires are the fourth pair. So in a business now, you might find that you've used up the first three pairs and then they want another line, and you're going to have to install that fourth line down the brown wire. So that's how it works. First line, second line, green, third line, brown, fourth line. And with this you would connect the white wire to A and the blue wire to B. Again, if you're using this white CW1308 cable, this is just a two pair cable, so you've got the blue pair and the orange pair. So the blue pair is the first line, the orange pair is the second line. So you would connect, again, the same as the Cat5e, white blue to A and blue to B. And with this cable here, this was used a long time ago, and also they went back to it not that long ago. So again, it's a two pair cable, but the colour codes are completely different. On this wire, the pair is the blue and the orange, and the second pair is the brown and the green. So in this instance, you would use orange to A and blue to B, because this is the first pair. Okay, so orange to A and blue to B. So hopefully, between those cables, one of them will be similar to what you've got at home. Okay, so really, really simple. If you look at this cam lock here, this is called a little cam lock. You don't need any tools for this. All you've got to do is flip up this red thing, up like so. Okay, so it clips down, you just flick it up, like that. And if you have a look inside there, you will see two holes for each of your wires. And also underneath, you will see it says A and B. So obviously the hole on this side here is the A wire, and the hole on this side here is the B wire. Yeah, and if you have a look really closely, you can actually see, I'm not sure if you'll be able to zoom in here or not, but there's two lots of holes. So you've got your first holes here, and then you've got a second lot of holes behind it. So what you have to do is you have to push the wire right the way in through both holes, and then when it goes through both holes, you will hit a stop at the back. So the wires need to go right the way through to touch the stop at the back, and then you just clamp it down. So let's do that now. So we're going to be using the white wire to A and the orange wire to B. And if you have a look, can you see that on the camera? Can you see I'm going right the way in through both holes until it hits the stop at the back. So if you zoom right the way in there, you can see it's gone through the first and the second set, and I can't push it in anymore. It's hit the stop at the back. And then all you've got to do is clamp it down. And if you have a look, these terminals here, they're just IDC terminals again, so they're just like the metal V. So as you push this down, the wire will go into the V, cut the plastic to touch the copper on the inside, and that's what makes the contact. So I'm just going to push that down now until it clicks. Did you hear that click at the very end? And now it's in place. And again, if you need to get into it again, you can do. If you've made a mistake, it's no problem. What I would say is, when you come to do it again though, because if you have a look closely, you can see now that the metal V's, can you see on the sheath where it's actually cut in to touch the copper on the inside. So what I like to do is, and this is why it's good to have slack, when you put it in again, I always like to work on fresh wire. So I'm going to cut just below those bits that were already terminated, and now I've got fresh wires again. Okay, so it's completely reusable. Again, we'll put it all the way in now through both holes. It can be a bit fiddly, especially if your wires want to bend. So a good little tip is to put the wires in nice and straight to begin with, because if you're trying to put the wires in like that, well, you're going to struggle. So just put the wires in nice and straight. Like that, through both holes, hitting the stop at the bottom and close it. Right, so believe it or not, that's all you have to do. It's that simple. And then get your green wire and just give a little turn so you don't trap it as you put it in there. Like that. And now we're going to be closing it. As you close it, make sure the loops of cable don't go over here or across there, because then when you screw into it, you're either going to cut the cable or it's going to short together, because the metal off the screw can foul the plastic and then short the wires together. So just push them down in the middle there, and just before you put it on, just make sure that there's nothing trapping the wires on either side. And then nice and straightforward, you get your two little screws. Now these screws here, these are self-tappers, so you're going to have to look at your back box. Because with the self-tappers, it's fine when you put them into a back box that doesn't have any brass inserts. So when you look in the hole here, there's no brass inserts. So when you put the self-tappers in, they make their own like thread as you're going in. But if you were to look, if you had a different master socket, for example, if you had a master socket like this, then you can see that there's a metal insert in there. And with the metal insert, you have to have a machine screw. If you put one of these in here, it's not going to go in properly. Okay, so have a look at your back box to decide what screws you need. Whether you need the self tappers, which are shaped like that, or whether you need the machine screws, which are shaped like this one here. This is a machine screw, and this one here on top is a self tapper. Right, so on this one here, this back box doesn't have any metal inserts in, so it's just the self-tappers. Just going to pop them in and screw them down. The self-tappers are not as nice as the screw inserts, but I presume they're cheaper to make because you haven't got to put a little brass insert in. So you just screw that down. Make sure the screws go all the way in. And that is that. When you put that back on there, that's as easy as that. That's how you wire up that NTE5C master socket. Now, talking about the back boxes, the good thing about this particular new version of the NTE5C, it will fit quite a wide range of back boxes, but it will struggle on some of the metal ones. So if you have a look at the old NTE5A, you can see on this particular back box, it doesn't go in because it's got these ones here. And these back boxes are very common when you go to places like Wickes and B&Q. You do see a lot of these ones. And because the way the old one was designed, it doesn't fit on there. So that's why you have to use that type of back box. But with this new NTE5C, it does also fit on this back box. The only one it struggles with is the electrical metal back boxes. It's fine, the ones that just have the two lugs come in where my fingers are now, but some of the older electrical back boxes, or you can still get them now, it will have four lugs. It will have a lug here, here, and it will also have one at the top and bottom. Well, the top one gets in the way. It's not such a big deal on this one here because there's quite a distance on the old NTE5, but on the new one, there's not enough distance. So what you have to do is you just have to knock the metal lug out of the way. But hopefully, you won't be unlucky enough to have one of those metal back boxes. But yeah, that's it. So I'm going to now do another video on how to wire up an extension from this. and also loads of other various videos. Okay, thanks a lot for watching. Take care now.